What's up, guys? Welcome to today's video where we're working on the nicest FD that I have really ever been around. So this is a 93 Montego blue with tan. It's got the bows in the back, and let me tell you, this thing smokes. So if you've never been around RX7s and rotaries, you know heavy smoke can really only mean two things. One, bad turbo seals leaking, or two, oil control rings. This smoke is definitely not fuel smoke, and you can 100% see oil dripping out of the exhaust, coming out of the wastegate ports on the turbos. It's just a whole mess. So let's get out of this wind, get this thing up into the shop, see how this thing looks. Look at all the smoke. Dang, this thing's a mess. Well, let me tell you, this car is so nice. Maybe we'll do another video, things you need to know about a $60,000 FD. One, you never close the door with the handle. You always close the door with the window frame. If you close the door with the handle, you break the door panel every time. Window frame, nice firm shut. Same thing over here. Never pull on this. You should put a label right here for all your passengers that says do not touch, so they never hold on to that door handle, because it will break. And door panels for these cars are, let's just say, more expensive than most of the cars I own. Homie's got sticky tires on this thing so he can pick up some rocks, but and you can just see the smoke rolling out of the back of this thing. I'm excited to take the exhaust off and show you how much oil is in the exhaust. This is the second FD that I've worked on that had a blown turbo seal, and it just fills the exhaust with oil, and the car will smoke for, even after you replace the seals, it'll keep smoking and smoking and smoking. And it's just not the most fun thing ever. It is nice though that this thing has some ground clearance. I don't have to worry about scraping on my driveway. My Corvette's, it's super low, and it's a tedious act to get up the driveway. All right, guys, fresh out of the smoke show in the shop, we got the front of the car track armored up. This is what I use on my Corvette. Go to the track or take the Corvette on like a long interstate drive. Just some clear wrap, keeps the rock chips off. Still drive your car, keeps rock chips off, doesn't hurt the paint. Now that we can get in here and look at this, this has somewhat of a simplified setup with the turbos, meaning aftermarket blow-off valve, some stuff down there is deleted, and I was told that it had a simplified solenoid like sequential. So simplified sequential. It's like you remove some of the vacuum stuff, do this and the other. I'm not a super expert on it. I know there's really easy to follow right up on it on RX7 Club that you can go find. So what do we have to do to get the turbos out? First, intercooler's got to come out. Take the Y pipe off, get the down pipe off, disconnect the coolant and oil feed lines to the turbos, and that whole thing will come out. As a matter of fact, let me grab a set of turbos and I'll show you. Alright, so this right here is effectively what we're working with, sitting on the side of that engine. Kind of see, down pipe goes here, comes out. This is the back of the engine. The Y pipe connects this and this, comes up, and that's what you see here. And I believe that these are 99 spec turbos and not 93 spec. Reason being, the inlet is bigger on the later model turbos. So, fun fact, we need to extract this from there. So let's get started. Alright guys, that wasn't as bad as it usually is. Typically these cars are super rusty and everything is toast and you can't get any of it apart. So fortunately with this one being recently assembled, we're able to get there. As you can see, look at the oil on that. I wanted to show you guys before I got into the rest of getting this thing apart. Look at the oil that just pooling inside the downpipe. It's like a Gretty or something downpipe. Just look at the amount of oil in there. So my speculation, and I'm not always right, but my guess is that the turbo seals are bad, or the turbo drain is clogged, which is keeping the oil in the turbos. I've never seen oil control rings leak this much oil. It is literally like, from the car being in the garage for 2 hours, I've got puddles of oil dripping out of the exhaust and just an excessive amount of oil. I'll grab my flashlight so I can show you. And there is just an excessive amount of oil down here coming out of the turbos. And it's gnarly. So from here, this becomes a very fun and tedious job. I've got to get that shield off of there. We've got to disconnect the coolant line, which is here, the oil feed line, which is here. We disconnect both drains. There's 2 drains on these turbos, one on the front iron, one on the rear iron, and then there's a coolant back feed, right? That one, which I believe is it at the bottom? There's the line right where my flashlight is that connects to the bottom of the water pump. So it comes out of the top of the water pump here, through the turbos, and then back into the bottom of the water pump. You can see there's a water pump there. So this is from the black FD. Here's the feed to the turbos on the back of your water pump. And here's the return to your turbos here. So you can see feed there, return there. However, when it's down in the car, feed there, return there, which is a little bit different, but close enough. So a couple more vacuum lines to disconnect. And then the bottom exhaust manifold bolts, you actually don't need to remove the turbos from the lower intake manifold, or lower intake, from the lower exhaust manifold. If you can get to them, it's easier to take them off from this point right here. So there's actually a separate piece that mounts to the engine, which is this. Okay, so you have this piece right here that goes on the engine. This one sits on there like that. This is your bypass valve for the sequentials. So when you're at low RPM, closes off the rear turbo, hits the thing, opens the rear turbo, full rip. So this piece sits on this, like that. Okay? So, you might think it'd be easier to maybe get the whole thing off, but it might be easier to just take the turb skis off the manifold deal. Getting these bolts right here are a royal pain with the intake manifold. If you can see, they are buried. You can see them. They're buried down in there. But I think it might be easier to just separate the turbos from this piece and then take this piece off after the fact. Now, my guess is that I'm not going to see any oil in this manifold section. If we do, that would mean oil control rings. There might be a little bit of oil in there, but I doubt there's going to be a ton of oil. The thing doesn't start smoking right away, right? As soon as you start, it doesn't start smoking. It only starts smoking after about 30 seconds. And if you think about that, if it had oil control rings that were leaking, it would smoke as soon as it started because there's going to be oil in the combustion chambers. However, the smoke that you're seeing come out of the engine is once the turbos have heated up a little bit and the hot exhaust gas is boiling that oil that's in the turbos and it's coming out the exhaust. So that's what we're seeing. I'm going to dive in and start disconnecting this stuff and we'll get these turbos off of here. Look at all the oil in these things. So bad. Let's get this heat shield off of here real quick. Turbos. Oh, man. Hey, guys, it's definitely turbos. Look at this. Oof. Oof. That's so much shaft play. Ouch. It doesn't hit the housing, but like, you shouldn't be able to hear that noise. Let's flip these around. Look at the rear turbo. Rear turbo. Oh my gosh, guys. It's the same thing. That's wasted. No oil seal is going to hold up to that. Dang. Man, that's not good. That's not good. Dang. Yeah. I mean, where's my flashlight? Proof's in the pudding, is that what they say? Look at how dry that is, right? Dry. No oil. There's no oil in the engine side of this manifold, right? See how it's dry? That little bit's from my finger. I was feeling it. No oil in there. There's oil coming out the seam where the gasket was, which also, a lot of these bolts weren't that tight, so whoever put them in didn't have them cranked down. So that's why you're getting this seepage out of here. And if you listened carefully when I started this car earlier and we drove it up, you could hear it ticking, little tip. That's the exhaust leak sound. So it definitely had an exhaust leak from up here. Now, I can say the downpipe bolts were mega tight. Somebody wanted that downpipe on there. But these bolts are kind of hard to get to, which is why I didn't show you getting to them, because literally it would have just been a spaghetti mess of my hands, and all you would have seen is me somewhat struggling. But it's off. Turb skis are out. And man, I'm stoked. That really wasn't that bad. Like, it took me longer. We'll put this into perspective, okay? It took me longer to take these turbos off, being super careful. We're talking like meticulously careful, not hitting my tools on anything, not leaning on the car, just being very respectful, right? It took me about 2 hours. It took Justin and I about 2 hours to get the engine out of the RX7. So these really aren't that bad. You could probably have them off a lot quicker. I mean, I wasn't working that fast, but that's really not that bad. I'm pretty amped. So that's kind of thereabouts on how long it should take. Now, if you've got all your intakes and stuff, like the stock whole bits and the airbox and stuff, you're going to have a little more time removing that. Same with the stock intercooler. It's a little bit different of a setup. This one has an HKS V-mount deal on it. So, but anyways, turbos are off. There's no way a turbo seal is holding up to that much shaft play. It's just going to spit oil out of it. Seeing that there's no oil in the lower exhaust manifold just proves my point that this is exactly turbos. All the oil is coming from here. I would check, and I'm going to check and pull these drains off and see if they're clogged, but I doubt they're clogged with how much shaft play these things have. It's got to just be these. These were rebuilt, so I don't know what rebuilt FD turbos means. My guess would be new center sections, and then reassembly into here, but they didn't last very long. So if they were, and a rebuilt turbo, even if it had a leaky seal, should not have this much shaft play. And I mean, I can check the feeds, but I'd bet it's definitely getting oil to the turbos. That'd be the only thing to check whenever we get these serviced and get it back together. When I first start this car, I'll crack this oil feed line here and just make sure that oil comes out of it. So that way we know that there's oil pressure to the turbos. And then when we get the new ones, I will make sure these drains are free. But super easy to check once you have it out of the car. And really it's not that crazy. So I've got to put together a list of all the new gaskets on an FD. You never reuse stuff. Stuff like this, it's a mess, buried down inside your FD. Takes you 2 hours to get to everything. You don't want to be risking it for the biscuit, putting used gaskets back in there. So we'll get all new stuff. And yeah, I'm amped. I'm stoked. It's just the turbos. I really didn't want to pull the rest of this engine out, but once you're here, it's all pretty easy to get the rest of the engine out. But typically on these, like I explained in the previous FD, which was a single turbo, when we worked on that car is easier to take the engine harness and just flip it off to the side, pull the engine out, leave the harness in the car. On this one, this harness right here that snakes back and goes down under the passenger footwell. I'm not going to touch it because the car is super clean, but in the passenger footwell, you can just unplug the ECU. There's one other harness that goes into the body, like the chassis and the dash. Unplug that, pull the harness out, and then all you have to do is disconnect the alternator and starter over here. And this whole engine just whoosh, comes out with the harness on it, and then you can service and go through the vacuum system while the engine is on your engine stand. So, with that, guys, that's why your 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, whatever, $1,000 FD smokes, if it does. More power to you. Or if it smokes, that's what you got to do to fix it. So, if you love rotary cars, you want to learn more about this stuff, drop a comment below the things you want to learn. I probably have or can make any video that you want on these cars. And if not, I'll add it to my list. And if I get a project car that I can do the work and show the process on, then we'll do it. But with that, guys, thank you guys very much for watching. Definitely go check out the other videos on the channel. Like I mentioned, working on a single turbo FD as well. So if you have a single turbo car that smokes, could be a similar problem. But with that, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Keep it rad. It's cold outside, and the dog was barking at all sorts of stuff earlier, like going crazy up in the woods, just like she was doing the other night. I don't know if the deer are running or the coyotes are running or whatever, but brought her in the shop because as much as she thinks she's tough, out here in the wilderness, pack of coyotes against a 58-pound little mix of a dog ain't exactly a battle I want to try to worry about fighting. So, peace, guys.